Game shows are supposed to be fun, right? Some trivia, a spinning wheel, maybe a buzzer or two. Well, not always. Some shows ditch the rules entirely. One pits a man against a fly, another turns sleep deprivation into a televised sport, and the last one on this list? Let's just say we can't even show you footage of it, for reasons that'll make perfect sense once we get there. These aren't your average game shows. They're weird, chaotic, sometimes a little disturbing, and yet every single one of them aired on actual TV with actual audiences, and somehow they worked. Let's break down 3 of the most ridiculous game shows ever made, and why, in their own insane way, they might be kind of brilliant. Man vs. Fly is probably the most literal game show title in TV history, and somehow, it still doesn't prepare you for what you're about to watch. The format debuted on the UK's The Nightly Show as a reoccurring sketch segment before becoming its own standalone series. International versions aired in countries like Japan and Russia, each adapting the premise with their own local twists, but the basic structure never changed. Here's the setup. A contestant enters a small, sealed, white padded room. It's roughly the size of a walk-in closet, sterile and minimalist. There's a single camera positioned in front, and usually a top-down angle tracking the action like a sports broadcast. Once the contestant is angled in a position, a single common housefly is released into the room. The contestant is then handed one object. This object might be practical, like a rolled-up newspaper, a fly swatter, or a bug zapper paddle, but just as often, it's completely ridiculous. In some episodes, players are handed bananas, rubber chickens, feather dusters, giant inflatable hammers, or even vacuum tubes. From the moment the object is received, the clock starts. Each contestant has 60 seconds to kill the fly. There are no points, no teams, no bonus rounds. The entire episode, usually just 90 seconds long, is focused on this entire encounter. It's the most minimal competition on television. But why does this work? Because this show taps into an experience everyone has had, trying and often failing to kill a fly. Flies are small, fast, and erratic. They don't follow patterns. They land for half a second and vanish again. They make you feel insane. And here, that insanity is the point. The show is edited like a high-stakes sports match. You get dramatic zoom-ins on the contestant's face, wide-eyed and frantic. There's slow-motion footage of near misses, close-ups of the fly landing just out of reach, and even replays with commentary. It turns the swatting of a bug into a full-on psychological showdown. There's also the added tension that most people fail. In a surprising number of episodes, the contestant never lands a hit. You watch them sprint, flail, dive, and even scream, only for buzzers to go off with the fly still buzzing happily around the room. That unpredictability is what gives the show its staying power. You never know if you're about to see an epic one-hit kill or a complete meltdown. To crank up the difficulty, some versions of the show introduced handicaps. One contestant might have to wear massive foam gloves, another might have limited visibility goggles or be forced to wear a heavy mascot costume. The fly, meanwhile, always stays the same, fast, agile, and unbothered. And the kicker? The prize is not really that crazy. In the UK version, winners get just about £500. It's good money, but it can't really hold a candle to other game shows. Sometimes it was even less. In other countries, the prize was just bragging rights. You're not doing this for money. You're doing it because you get to say, on record, that you beat a fly in hand-to-wing combat. The fly, ironically, is never shown to be harmed. The show usually cuts before we see any actual swatting, probably to avoid complaints, but you know whether they succeed or not by the contestant's reaction, and the host's dry post-match analysis. Man vs. Fly is both incredibly dumb and expertly executed. It's shot with the seriousness of a boxing match, but framed around the most mundane, childish frustration you can imagine. And somehow, it works. It works because it's fast, it's clear, and it's entertaining every single time. There's no lore, no setup, no strategy. It's just one person, one fly, 1 minute, and it's more watchable than most primetime reality shows. But this is nothing compared to the psychological torture of the next one. Out of all bizarre game shows to ever air, Touch the Truck might be the most physically demanding and most brutally simple. Aired in March 2001 on Channel 5 in the UK, this one-off event was hosted by the legendary broadcaster Dale Winton, and marketed as a test of mental toughness, endurance, and sheer desperation. The concept? A group of contestants stand around a shiny red Toyota truck. They place one hand on it, and whoever keeps their hand on the truck the longest without stepping away, falling asleep, or breaking any rules wins the truck. That's it. There are no trivia rounds, no bonus games, no entertainment value baked into the format. Just people standing there for days. The show started with 20 contestants, each hoping to outlast the others through whatever means necessary. Mental tricks, stretching strategies, sheer stubbornness. And the rules were punishing. Contestants were only allowed a 10-minute break every 2 hours. During those 10 minutes, they could eat, use the bathroom, and rest. But the clock didn't stop. If you didn't return in time or accidentally removed your hand from the truck, eliminated. This structure immediately turned the show into a slow-motion meltdown. Sleep deprivation kicked in fast. By the second day, people were visibly unstable, slurring their words, wobbling on their feet, talking to themselves. One contestant, Jerry Middleton, ultimately won the truck after a mind-numbing 81 hours and 43 minutes, nearly 3.5 days without proper sleep. He was 39 years old, unemployed at the time, and told reporters afterward that he relied on Buddhist meditation to keep his mind clear. According to interviews, he hallucinated during the final stretch and couldn't remember large parts of the events, but he kept his hand on the truck, and that was all that mattered. The show itself didn't air live. Channel 5 broadcast it in condensed, highlighted episodes. Each segment showed contestant progress, breakdown, eliminations, and interviews. While the pacing was intentionally slow and raw, that was the whole point. Viewers were watching a gradual collapse, not a game. One woman fell asleep standing up and toppled over, disqualified on the spot. A man burst into laughter for several minutes with no explanation, then quit mid-sentence. It wasn't just a competition, it became an endurance-based social experiment. Critics didn't hold back. British media called the show inhumane, exploitative, and a televised breakdown. The British Medical Association even issued warnings about the health risks associated with prolonged sleep deprivation featured in the show. Some compared it to a public punishment or a sleep torture study. Others just couldn't believe that Channel 5 was airing days of footage of people barely clinging to consciousness. But here's the thing, it worked. Viewership numbers weren't record-breaking, but touched the truck between a cult phenomenon. People tuned in not for excitement, but for suspense. The suspense wasn't built around who would win, but when someone would finally collapse. It was car crash television in the most literal sense. You couldn't look away, even when it was uncomfortable. And this wasn't an original idea either. Touch contests have existed for decades, particularly in the United States and Australia, often held at car dealerships or malls. These events were usually regional publicity stunts, but what Touch the Truck did was televise it like a mainstream game show and give it professional production value, commentary, editing, lighting, on-screen graphics. By packaging human endurance as a reality competition, it crossed the line that many shows flirt with but rarely commit to. No distractions, just raw willpower. In hindsight, the genius of the format lies in how cheap it was to produce. No sets, no props, just a parking lot, a truck, and a group of sleep-deprived hopefuls. And yet, people still talk about it over 2 decades later. It was a test of body and mind, disguised as a game show. And while it only aired once, Touch the Truck left behind a blueprint that reality TV would later build on. Film everything and let the breakdowns become entertainment. Now, Japan is known for pushing boundaries in variety television, and even without that landscape, Seeing What Happens stands out as one of the most jaw-dropping game shows ever produced. Now, we obviously can't show real footage from Seeing What Happens, and trust us, it's better for everyone that way. The show aired late night on adult cable in Japan, and let's just say, YouTube would not be thrilled. Yes, it's real, yes, it aired on Japanese TV. A male contestant steps on stage to sing a karaoke song from start to finish. While he sings, he's placed in a situation designed to distract him in an extremely passionate way. A professional, off camera, attempts to, let's say, elevate his level of distraction using hands-on methods. The challenge? Finish the song before losing focus. That's it. That's the entire game. Each episode follows the same structure. The contestant chooses a song and takes center stage in front of a live audience, a panel of judges, and a host who treats the entire thing with full game show seriousness. Once the music starts, so does the distraction. It's performed discreetly, always behind a curtain or out of frame, to comply with Japan's strict television broadcast laws, but on their ability to make it through the full song without breaking down, stopping, or being overcome by the situation. Despite the premise, Seeing What Happens is not shot like adult content. There's no on-screen nudity, and the camera rarely cuts away from the contestant's face. Instead, the show plays out like a legitimate karaoke competition, complete with real-time vocal pitch tracking, judges scoring breath control and timing, audience reactions ranging from laughter to stunned silence, encouraging commentary from the host. What makes it fascinating is how seriously the format is treated. There's no winking at the camera, no over-the-top reactions, just an awkward, intense game of focus. The contestants' expressions do most of the storytelling, and in many episodes, the struggle to maintain eye contact, hit notes, or just keep going becomes oddly captivating. One memorable contestant was a monk in training who claimed meditation would give him the mental strength to succeed. He came close, but faltered in the final chorus. The crowd applauded anyway. Seeing What Happens is a part of a broader genre in Japanese entertainment called Batsu games, segments where contestants endure bizarre or embarrassing challenges, often for comedic payoff. It's less about humiliation and more about resilience. How well can someone perform when everything around them is working against them? It also reflects Japan's unique approach to variety TV. Game shows, music, comedy, and even risky elements often blend together in late-night programming. Shows like this don't try to hide their shock value, but they don't rely on it either. They use it as a framework to explore something surprisingly universal: the difficulty of staying composed in absurd situations. Outside of Japan, the show became infamous when subtitled clips began circling online. Western audiences were mostly baffled, not just by the premise, but how normal the show looked outside of that premise. This wasn't low budget or underground. It had sets, lighting, editing, and a full-on audience. Of course, it didn't run for many seasons, and it's easy to see why. The premise is undeniably adult, but with all that controversy, Seeing What Happens found its way into the Hall of Fame of bizarre, one-of-a-kind TV shows. It's not for everyone, and it was never meant to be. But like the other game shows on this list, it understood what it was doing. It committed fully, leaned into its absurdity, and somehow made it work. At the end of the day, it still asked one of the most classic game show questions. Can you perform under pressure, no matter what's thrown at you? Man vs. Fly, Touch the Truck, and Seeing What Happens. 3 game shows that, on paper, sound completely unwatchable, but each one works. Man vs. Fly takes the simplest idea possible and turns it into fast, hilarious chaos. Touch the Truck stretches a single rule to the breaking point and shows what people are willing to go through for a prize. And Seeing What Happens, well, there's nothing else like it, and that's kind of the point. None of these shows should work, but they do. Because behind all the absurdity in each one, they all understand the core of what makes game shows fun. Tension, unpredictability, and commitment to the bit. If you like this breakdown and want more of the weirdest game shows ever made, hit like, drop a comment with your favorite, and subscribe for the next one. Thanks for watching.